I think we as a country now realize, given the rate at which our economy needs to grow and the size of the economy that we need to have, our own domestic consumption is not going to be enough. We have to have the world as our marketplace. The global trade in manufacturing is almost at about $15 trillion plus, whereas services is just about $7 trillion, which means that it's two times the size of service. So the opportunity is that much big.
Very big.
Our share, by the way, in that at the moment is negligible. So we have ample room to grow. I have never seen the government, both at the central level as well as at the state level, work with so much of urgency and speed and getting things done. This is indeed what is required, particularly when you talk about the tech world and when you talk about electronics manufacturing, because we do not have the luxury to simply wait for files to be, being pushed around and decisions not being made.
FED, one of the things that we've been advocating, the EMS or the electronic manufacturing services, which is basically assembly, is the most important one for us to initially gain scale.
The largest piece, even within electronics as a segment, is smartphones. And if you look at the smartphone manufacturing ecosystem, we now have that growing so fast within India. And it all started with the EMS piece. Also time for the Indian corporate sector to seize on this opportunity, to be willing to accept risk and shed the conservatism and the risk aversion.
Hi, welcome everyone. Today we have with us Banmali Agrawal. He's had a long career with the corporate world, both inside India and outside. And today he's a senior advisor to Tata Sons, as well as as well as the chairman of Tata Electronics. So really glad to have you with us, Banmali. You've been a really great champion of electronics manufacturing and electronics opportunity for India. Great to be having this conversation with you.
Thanks, Vinay. Happy to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think maybe we can start with the opportunity itself, right? And you've been so passionate about it. Why is this an opportunity for us in India today? Right this minute, why is this an opportunity?
Sure. So, Vinay, I think if you first just take a step back, I would say that the larger point is that manufacturing as a sector is a significant opportunity. I do feel that we as a country have kind of gone a little slow on the manufacturing front, maybe over the last few years. And as we all know, presently it just forms about 13, 14, 15 odd % of our economy. And I think it needs to be a much larger share of the economy. So my first point is that I think manufacturing clearly needs to be a much more significant share of the economy. And as we know, that is what's going to create the better paying jobs and so on and so forth. So that's one. Now, if you look at manufacturing, I would say that, by the way, manufacturing, I think the global trade in manufacturing is almost at about $15 trillion plus, whereas services is just about $7 trillion, which means that it's two times the size of service. So the opportunity is that much big.
Very big.
And our share, by the way, in that at the moment is negligible. So we have ample room to grow. The second point is that I think as we look at manufacturing, the new age manufacturing, or the biggest opportunity within manufacturing, I think comes from the electronic sector. I mean, electronics on its own provides an opportunity of anywhere around $5 trillion plus. And this is, again, a very significant, it's almost, the same size as the whole services opportunity. Further, I think the future, as we know, is all about tech. It's all about digitization. It's all those things. And the hardware or the manufacturing backbone to that entire initiative that even we as India have embraced so heartily, I think is something that we must be something that we should be going after. The other thing, when I would say, is that at the moment we are fortunate that there are some tailwinds, from a global standpoint, where the world is looking at alternatives, don't want to put all their eggs into, let's say, the China basket. And I think the realization that when it comes to IP, patents and so on, especially in the tech world, you need a safe place where you can get this done, a more democratic setup where free market forces are at play, etc. And I think
Right.
those are tailwinds that benefit us a lot.
Right.
So you put all this together,
Correct.
a significant global opportunity,
Right.
tailwinds because the world is looking at an alternative, let's say, to China. It's also a domestic need as far as we are concerned within India. For the point I made about increasing the share of manufacturing, I
Right.
would say we should be grabbing this opportunity with both our hands and
Mm-hmm.
making the most of it in as short a time frame as is feasible and as is possible.
Right. Thank you. That's a really good summary of the opportunity. And what follows from that, if I understood you right, is that really the opportunity, while we may want to manufacture quite a few products, electronics products for our domestic market, the real opportunity is exporting to the world.
Clearly, I think that is I think we as a country now realize
Mm-hmm.
that given the rate at which our economy needs to grow,
Right.
and the size of the economy that we need to have, our
Right.
own domestic consumption is not going to be enough to meet
Right.
those to aspirations. We have
Right.
to have the world as our marketplace.
Right.
And I think that is indeed the opportunity as well. So
Right.
again, once again, there's a nice combination of an opportunity being combined with the need as well in India.
Right. Great. So I think that's very well put. And if one reads the newspapers, today, right, there is so much action, and it almost overshadows everything else. At least in the manufacturing sector, it seems like we are having a lot of success. So, in your opinion, how much progress have we made, and in what areas have we made progress?
But I think that's a good question, and I would say we've made tremendous progress. The
Okay.
first is a complete shift in mindset and attitude, and which is
Mm-hmm.
extremely important.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, again, the first step of realization that we need to embrace manufacturing, and the government kind
Right.
of has been pushing this point and agenda extremely hard.
Right.
So I would welcome that change of mindset that we now have in the entire ecosystem. Now, the
Right.
second is I think the government has not just kept it as simple words, but they've
Mm-hmm.
backed it up with some really solid policy action in
Right.
terms of I would say, incentivizing the
Right.
entire activity of manufacturing, enabling it in the initial few years
Mm-hmm.
because of the hurdles or some of the disadvantages, that the country might have, and so on, in terms of financial incentives, even other kinds of incentives, and so on. So my point being that the government's role in this to really go all in order to
Mm-hmm.
seize the opportunity has
Mm-hmm.
been something which is really admirable, and
Right.
we should be making the most of it. The last
Right.
point I'd make around this, when you talk about change,
Mm-hmm.
but I've been working now for close to, a little shy of 40 years. I have
Mm-hmm.
never seen the government, both at the central level as well as at the state level,
Right.
work with so much of urgency and speed and getting
Right.
things done.
Right.
This is remarkable. And
Right.
this is indeed what is required, particularly when you talk about the tech world and when you talk about electronics manufacturing, because we do not have the luxury to simply wait for files to be, being pushed around and decisions
Right.
not being made. Now you
Right.
take all of this together. I think,
Mm-hmm.
it's like almost a place. It's like heaven for someone who wants to get into the whole manufacturing
Right.
ecosystem, and we do therefore see some significant moves made by large manufacturing companies, particularly multinationals. Maybe be they from be they might be from Taiwan, some from Korea. You have some large U.S. companies, shifting their base and making
Mm-hmm.
India as a source for their supplies in a very significant manner. So I think
Right.
you see this happening at a very frantic pace, and I
Mm-hmm.
think we'll see a lot more of this to come in the years to come.
Right. So it's refreshing to hear that the proverbial Indian elephant is now moving at a much faster pace than seen before, and at least in this space. And maybe this will set a precedent for other sectors where we can take sort of similar proactive action to move forward. Right.
Absolutely, I think these are times and days where speed of action is extremely important. I
Right.
think one needs to be simply decisive and move ahead, and that is what we are seeing in the ecosystem around.
Right. Thank you. So, just digging a little deeper into the electronics manufacturing value chain, right? There are different segments, with manufacturing activity in everything. First, working backwards from the finished product, you have the assembly of the finished product itself. One step behind, you have all the assemblies and the components that go into a phone or a PC or whatever. And then behind that, at the basic level, you have the design and manufacture of the semiconductors, chips that basically go into all of these components, right? So at FED, one of the things that we've been advocating is while all we should be present and all of them are important, the first stage that I talked about, that is the EMS or the electronic manufacturing services, which is basically assembly, is the most important one for us to initially gain scaling. Would you agree with that? How do you characterize it?
Absolutely, Vinay. I would wholeheartedly agree with that approach,
Mm-hmm.
and for the simple reason that I think whenever you start something new, it's very
Mm-hmm.
important to see the finished product first.
Right.
And
Right.
and I
Yeah.
think because once you begin to see it, once you begin to see the scale, etc., at which that operation takes place, then the
Mm-hmm.
rest of the ecosystem kind of develops very quickly and very fast because they see
Right.
the ultimate product, they can touch it, feel it, sense it,
Right.
and that provides a lot of impetus. So I would argue, I would completely agree with what you're saying, and I think
Right.
as you are aware, the largest piece, even within electronics as a segment,
Mm-hmm.
is smartphones. And if you
Mm-hmm.
look at the smartphone manufacturing ecosystem,
Right.
we now have that growing so fast within India.
Right.
And it all
Right.
started with the EMS piece. And
Right.
even within EMS, maybe started with final assembly first, then,
Right.
kind of working further upstream into manufacturing and machining and what have you. And now
Right.
already you see the
Mm-hmm.
component industry for the smartphone,
Right.
kind of mushrooming all the way from glass to batteries to
Right.
packaging of chips and all that. So all that is happening.
Right.
One more point that I'll just make from an
Right.
EMS front that I think it is maybe the single largest job creation opportunity
Right.
that manufacturing can provide,
Right.
and those numbers are not insignificant. So
Right.
it also fulfills that other objective that we have, which is to create a large number of well-paying and meaningful jobs.
Right. So just to summarize what I understood, start with something relatively low scale like assembly, where that creates a large number of jobs, understand the product and the whole system, and then it's easy for the whole, ecosystem to mushroom and sort of, become really world class.
Yeah,
Right.
but the thing in this to also understand that there's nothing low end in
Right.
electronics.
Okay.
Even assembly is reasonably complex, and I
Right.
think just to make the point that I think we have not seen in our country scale and precision and surface finish. All
Right.
of these three things come together at the same
Right.
time in a single location at once. So this is
Right.
something that we've got to get used to. But I don't think it is something that is unsurmountable. We can definitely
Right.
do that. We have the wherewithal and capability in the country, given our
Hmm.
background with the auto sector, with the aerospace sector. So we have the necessary skills and so on. We just need to
Right.
put it together in the
Right.
right combination, top it up with a few more, and then simply go for it.
Right. I'm really glad you said that. And, there are lots of people who are dismissive saying, all we are doing is putting these phones together or whatever, right? And it also requires things that we've never generally done. It is, relatively value added and creates tons of jobs. So there's nothing to,
Yeah, and
be snarky about.
that's right, Ben. And I would just encourage those people to maybe once visit a facility where something like this is
Right.
being done,
Right.
to understand that this is not how should I say child's play or simple
Right.
by any stretch of imagination.
Right.
Just as I said, given the scale, the finish, and all of that,
Right.
this is complex,
Right.
but we can do it, and we have been
Right.
doing it. So no reason not to continue doing it.
Right. So the last part of my our conversation, maybe we can touch upon, like you mentioned, the state, both the center and the state governments have been really being proactive. Like not we've not really seen this in India before, right? So there's a lot of things that they've done, including the much talked about PLI. Recently there was some rethinking and a downward revision of the tariffs, which I think has been a key ask. And so, but what are some other things that the government could be doing, or could be doing to boost electronics manufacturing? On the flip side, what do you think Indian corporates need to be doing to take advantage of this opportunity?
Great question, Vinay. So first, I think, as I said, the government should continue to
Hmm.
act with that sense of urgency that they have shown, both the central government as well as some of the state governments who are progressive and need to see it happen. So that is a must. The other thing which I think is required is to make sure that the enabling infrastructure, such
Right.
as the quality of power supply, such as even the quality of water supply. So it's not just the quantum of water supply, but even the quality of water supply. This makes a difference. The
Hmm.
logistics in terms of connectivity to airports, proximity of airports, because a lot of the electronics industry simply moves through air, be it the components or the finished product. And then,
Right.
of course, you have road connectivity as well. While the
Right.
connectivity is there, but to make sure that the quality, etc., of roads and so on is good.
Right.
And I would say that I think the government could do well in making sure that some of these enabling infrastructure pieces get into place. By the
Right.
way, a number of these fall in the domain of the state governments.
The government. Yeah.
So I think that is a role that they need to play. The
Right.
second most crucial thing in this is going to be people,
Hmm.
because this is going to be people heavy, and we need to keep a lot. We need to have a lot of people doing these operations.
Hmm.
And there are two things I'd like to say in that context. First, to make sure that those towns and cities get to be properly developed,
Right.
have the necessary ecosystem of education, healthcare, recreation, etc.
Hmm.
Because remember, we are talking about youngsters here. We're talking
Right.
about people being employed somewhere maybe 50 to 70,000 people in a single factory or location in the age group of maybe 20 to 23, 25, mostly women. So we need to make sure that the entire supporting ecosystem is in place.
Right.
The other part I'd also say is that I think one hears a lot on skill development and so on. And I
Hmm.
would argue that more than skills, what is necessary is just the basic platform of education so that
Right.
they have the basic know how of numeric skills, communication
Right.
skills, certain logic skills. The
Right.
specific skills of manufacturing can be taught by the employer or by the specific company in a fairly short
Right.
time.
Right.
But the fundamental foundational education, and I would
Right.
say, therefore, people in the age group of maybe 14, 15 to 18, if the
Hmm.
government could kind of make sure that they have those foundations in that foundation in place, I think it would
Hmm.
be a great help and benefit towards furthering this objective.
Right.
Uh, to your point on the role of the corporate sector, I think extremely important. We have seen a lot of interest by multinationals, wanting to come
Right.
here. They've actually set up shop and they're,
Right.
actually going, implementing things on scale. I would say it is also time for the Indian corporate sector to seize
Hmm.
on this opportunity,
Right.
uh, to be willing to accept risk, to be willing to try out something new, to be
Hmm.
willing to think scale and size and not
Right.
be incremental and how should I say, uh, very very small step kind of an approach.
Right.
This is not the time for that kind of an approach. I think this
Right.
needs a step change, and I would really urge Indian corporates to make the most of this opportunity and shed the conservatism and the risk aversion.
Right. I think it would be wonderful to have a really big, well-known, high quality global brand in this space for sure. That would be something that would make us all really proud. Yeah.
Absolutely,
All
Vinay.
right. I think that's sort of what I had in mind for this conversation. Thank you so much for your time. This has been really, really helpful. And I think if all of us were not really convinced that this is a great opportunity now, I think after this we should really have something to think about. Thank you so much for your time, Banmali, and as always, thank you for being such a passionate champion for this space.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much indeed, Vinay, for having me. Pleasure.
yeah. Thank you. Have a nice day.
Yeah.